right. Hello, and welcome to all of you beautiful souls tuning in today to the Heart of the Soul podcast. As Earthing Nova, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm your host, Amana, and I am so happy that you're here. This is a space where we remember what it means to be wild women walking upon this earth, navigating the ebbs and flows of the seasons of our lives, honoring each other's differences, and connecting about that which unites us. Together, we practice using our voices, the ancient ritual of storytelling, sharing our stories of birth, life, and death, and celebrating how we and the stories we tell change across time. It's my hope that after soaking in these stories, you will feel more connected and less alone. Today is January 6th, 2023. It's my dear friend Jayma's birthday, so shout out to you, even though it won't be your birthday when this episode goes live. But yeah, I have a new microphone here, and I'm hoping that some of these like glitchy sounds that have been happening on episodes that will come out before this one will resolve. And I'm also using my like hotspot on my phone right now and not the Wi-Fi I have been connecting to here. I'm in Mississippi now, and so yeah, I'm using the hotspot, so I'm hoping that it won't also be glitchy because of that. And we are investing in a new like portable internet here for our little traveling tiny home. So I'm hoping to keep the quality of the recordings high for you guys and easy for you to listen to. I have a whole list of topics that I want to talk about and share with you, as well as a list of women that I would love to interview and have on the show this next year in 2023. I cannot believe it's 2023 already. Amazing. I have been feeling into like my words or phrases for this year. I set some intentions. Emily Salday of the Free Birth Society podcast, I was on a call with her at the end of this year, and she talked about one of her practices of like stating things at the beginning of like this year as though we're at the end of this year. Like in 2023, I did this and this and that. And so I did write down some of those and have spoken some of those out loud. But I've also been like leaning into my just kind of like a couple of words that I can lean into. And when I was down by the little pond that's on this land that we're on right now, this morning with my cup of tea, there was this beautiful white crane across the pond. And the words like unearthing my euphoria returned to me, which is so interesting. This is actually the first blog I ever started. I think I only posted one blog on it, and it was, like over 10 years ago. But it was called Unearthing My Euphoria. So I feel like I'm returning to that phrase. And then I feel like there's another phrase that is also gonna walk with me through 2023, but that is the one that has come to me this morning. So I share that with you as well. I would love to hear if you want to share, if you're watching on YouTube, in the chat, like what words, what phrases, what energies are you feeling into at this early time in 2023? So, as some of you might know, if you've been following along for a while, I used to work in a hospital in a department called palliative care, I worked there for like over 5 years as a registered nurse in this particular area of practicing medicine, where palliative care, often people think that palliative care and hospice are the same thing, but they're actually two different parts of the medical system. Hospice is very specific to people who are no longer pursuing any life-prolonging treatment, and it's for the You can only be in hospice if you're expected to live less than 6 months, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. If they wouldn't be surprised if you died within the next 6 months. So whereas palliative care is an area of medicine that can come alongside people who are expected to live for many more years, it's a more like holistic department of medicine where they're trying to incorporate mind, body, spirit more. But let me just tell you what I'm going to talk about so you can decide if you want to keep listening to this or not. And because it's important to people, even if they're not, even if you don't feel like you're at the end of your life, or if you don't have a life-limiting condition, I'm going to be talking about what are called advanced directives and POLST forms. And so these are documents that you might choose to have in place for the possibility of you getting in a car accident or having some unexpected sickness or injury that places you in a position where you are deemed not able to make medical decisions for yourself. In which case, there's a sort of line of, if you don't have this documentation in place, that I'm going to be speaking to Washington specifically because that's what I know and worked within and have like checked back in with my coworkers that are still working in this area of medicine, about what happens if you haven't named someone and who would then be making decisions for you without your permission or agreement. Who would be making decisions for you medically? Which would be big and small decisions. A UPS truck just pulled up, so I'm hoping they don't knock on my door. We'll see here. But if I have to pause, that's why. So I'm going to talk to you about, if you don't name anyone, who would be the ones that would make your decisions for you if you were in a car accident and in a coma, for example. And also talk about the documents that you could, yeah, there they are. All right, so that was the delivery of this new internet service, this mobile service that we've invested in. Of course, we're gonna have to set it up, so it's not present for this conversation, but all right. So, let me reorient back to what I was talking to you about. So I'm going to talk to you about the advanced directives, who would be making decisions for you if you haven't named someone, and the process, at least in Washington state, to name the people that you would want to be making medical decisions for you, and what you might want to talk to them about, and what's important to discuss so that they are making decisions not based on what they would want for themselves or what they think you would want, but if you can take the time to have these conversations with them and actually tell them what you would want for yourself in these potential scenarios. Of course, though, your feelings about things can shift and change over time, and you can continue to have conversations with people about this, and I'll just prompt you with some questions of possible, things that you might want to talk about and think about for yourself. Because a lot of times, we're in a culture where we really don't acknowledge or think about death very often. So they might be some like hard questions for you to be facing. But I feel like they're important ones to put out there in the world for you to consider what you might want for yourself in some different positions. And then I'm also going to talk about a POLST form. And I'll also say, if you're, in another state, like a lot of these forms are like, not reciprocity, but there's like, they honor them from, like, if you have a form from one state, they'll honor it in another state. And I don't believe that the laws are that different from place to place. So you should be able to, look up the state that you're in and download a form that then you can complete yourself. But I'll be showing you Washington state forms, as well as a Washington state POLST form, which is a very specific form for very specific circumstances of like when someone is not breathing and they don't have a pulse, and or either of those things. And again, those forms are often honored from place to place. And I imagine they're similar in a lot of the industrialized world. And what else? I'm sure a few more things will come up as we move forward. Oh, also a 5 wishes form, which goes a little more in depth for people who might want to take that deep dive. So if you, let's just say, I know it's like not a typical one, but let's say you're in an accident and you're not in a coma, but you're just on a ventilator and they have you medicated for pain, so you're not actually able to make decisions for yourself. If you, I'll show you this form that they have in Washington, and I'll also kind of speak through it. But if you don't choose a healthcare agent, like if you haven't filled out one of these documents that I'm going to show you here in a minute, then this is the pathway of people that will be making medical decisions for you along with your medical team. So here in Washington State, if you have not named someone your healthcare surrogate decision maker, and again, this is different than like than what you would do in a will. Sometimes a will has a piece of this in it, but does not go into the depth that I'm going to talk about here today. And this is an area where a lot of people just don't even know about it or have confusion about what this means. So yeah, that's why I'm speaking to it today. So if you don't have this form, if you happen to have a guardian appointed by the state, which would be really unusual to have a guardian appointed by the state, it wouldn't be randomly. It would be like if you were in the medical system and you couldn't make decisions for yourself for a long period of time, then eventually the courts would name a decision maker to you. That's what I'm just speaking to it because it's at the top here. And then if you have a named healthcare agent, and then the next person, but normally the way it would go, like without those top 2. So if you don't have an advance directive filled out with someone named as your healthcare surrogate decision maker, then if you have a spouse, a legal spouse, then they would be your legal surrogate healthcare decision maker. Even if you're separated, if you're not fully divorced, they will be the ones making decisions for you. So just keep that in mind as you move through your life. If you're in a position where a relationship is ending and you would like to protect yourself from that possibility, you would want to complete one of these documents. If you don't have a spouse and you do have adult children, then they would be your surrogate decision makers jointly. And so if you get along with your children, if you've had these conversations with them, if they're all in alignment together, then this would, be fine if you don't have this document. But I encountered a lot of people in my work in palliative care we worked, with people that were near the end of life and also people that were years away from their end of life. But there were people that had adult children and maybe they didn't speak to all of their children. Maybe not all of their children spoke to them anymore and they didn't get along with them. Or the children had a hard time getting along with each other, in which case this would be a very challenging situation for your children and for the medical system to try to carry out your wishes based on what these children are telling us. Say we're a medical provider, I'm no longer a part of the medical system, I've chosen to step away, allow my license to expire, I'm no longer a part of that system. But I'm just speaking to it as if I were, like, if I were part of your medical team and we had all these adult children and I didn't know, you didn't have anything written up to share what your values really were, what it was meaningful to you and your quality of life, and what was the ways that you wanted to move through those end times. We would have to glean information from these adult children. So that's a reason to write down in a clear document what your desires are. So then if you don't have adult children, then it would go to living parents. So if you had living parents, then let's say you're younger, like you're me, and I have living parents right now. Not everyone my age does, but I do. I don't have adult children. Let's say it was something that happened with my spouse as well. So then it would go to parents. So living parents, again, it would be if two of them are living, they would be making the decisions together for you. If you don't have living parents, then it would go to living siblings, and it would again go to all of them making decisions together. So in the medical system, this looks like us trying to contact all the siblings that we're aware of for a person. If they don't have a spouse, adult children, or parents, then we would be reaching out to all their siblings and trying to gather information about this human being that we're not able to have a meaningful conversation with because of the state of their body, medically, physically, mentally. So again, if you don't get along with your siblings, if you wouldn't want your siblings making medical decisions for you, this is why you would complete one of these documents. And then it would move to relatives, greater relatives like aunts and uncles and people like that. And then the last case would be if you have none of those people, that we can't find any of those people, if the medical system can't find them, then they would reach out to people like friends and neighbors who knew you or know you. And they would be asking them questions about your values and what's meaningful to you in life and what quality of life means to you and what that looks like and what sort of medical treatments do they know of. If you've had some of these conversations with them, are you okay with? So I hope that it's not too confusing. I hope it'll become more clear as I move through here. I will come back to this and read through the decision-making hierarchy, is what we called it, within the medical system. So this is a bright, if they're often this color, this like bright green. I'm trying to see if you can see it okay. It's called a POLST form. It's a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment is what the POLST stands for. And they have something very similar to this in all the states that I'm aware of. And you have to have a physician or nurse practitioner, it can't be a registered nurse. It would have to be a nurse practitioner, a PA, or an MD complete this form with you. It requires their signature for it to be valid. And on this form, it talks specifically about whether or not you would like the attempt of CPR for yourself. If you are found without a pulse and not breathing, would you like the medical team to attempt to bring you back to life, really? Because if you're not breathing and you don't have a pulse, you're dead. So a lot of people say yes. Some people say no. So yes, attempt CPR. I'm not going to go into it in this episode, but maybe in another episode, the statistics that we currently have about CPR and how the percentages of people that return to a meaningful quality of life after having CPR. It's very uncommon for people to attain the same quality of life that they had before they had a cardiac arrest or event like this. So just also know that. So there's a box where you can say, yes, please try to resuscitate me, or no, do not attempt resuscitation and allow a natural death. Now, the hard part about a form like this is we don't carry them around with us. We don't walk around with them. We don't have them in our wallets. These are mainly used within a hospital or hospital-like setting, like in nursing homes. All people that are residents there are required to have one of these documents so that the staff there knows if they find them without a pulse and not breathing, should they attempt to bring them back to life? Should they intervene with a natural death? So, some people religiously or otherwise have really strong feelings about like the fact that this is even a possibility, that we even do this in our culture to stop a natural death. And unfortunately, even though some people have like tattooed it on themselves and said DNR, like if an ambulance is called, if a medical provider comes upon you, it's like by law, their requirement to attempt resuscitation. Like the default is to try. So even if you don't want to be resuscitated, if you don't have one of these if they don't have one of these documents in front of them, they're going to try to stop the natural death that is occurring in that moment in time. Such an interesting thing that we have right now in this moment in time in our culture in the United States. So that's where I'm speaking to. Washington is where I practiced, where I learned about this and practiced. So if they don't know, the default is to try, especially if EMS, like an ambulance is called, their default is to do this. So some people do have them on their refrigerators in their homes, and that is a place the EMS is trained to look at, like on the back of their door, the refrigerator, in which case you would hope that they look, and you hope that if you have a DNR, a do not resuscitate, allow a natural death, that they will allow that and not attempt life-prolonging treatment. This next level B speaks to whether you would want full treatment. It says a primary goal is prolonging life by all medically effective means, including intubation, which would be a tube down your throat and breathing for you. Chest compressions, which are a very significant thing where you're literally pushing on a person's chest, which is compressing their heart to attempt to establish blood flow throughout your body into your vital organs. You often break ribs when doing this, to the point, like that is actually just part of the process. Is breaking ribs is just very normal. If you are getting the blood flow, you are probably breaking ribs. Then there's selective treatment, where someone can say my primary goal is treating medical conditions while avoiding invasive measures whenever possible. So this is people that are okay with like things like IV fluids and medications, a cardiac monitor, but some people draw the line of not wanting a breathing tube and a machine breathing for them, because that is what a breathing tube is. We now have these like less invasive measures of breathing assistance, which are like CPAP, BiPAP, high flow oxygen. So some of these are like a mask that would go over your face and it forcibly pushes air into you. And then the high flow oxygen nasal cannula, also like same thing, it pushes highly oxygenated air into your lungs. And then there's this comfort focused treatment, where my primary goal is maximizing comfort. If you're okay with receiving pain medication by any route, but you don't want these other things. And then they've added in, there are some religious preferences where People are not okay with receiving blood products. So like they name that here. And dialysis is another one of those things. Dialysis is a treatment where your kidneys are no longer functioning themselves. And if you were to continue with that, like with kidney failure, that you would die from that in itself. But some people choose to go on what's called dialysis, where every few days you have to be hooked up to a machine that filters your blood the way that your kidneys would if they were working, and that sustains your life, having that dialysis, and without it you would die. And of course, remember that we can all die any day, anytime. No one is promised tomorrow or even the next hour or minute. I don't know why I felt the need to throw that in there, but just, I feel like sometimes we, in this culture right now, like we feel, what is the word I might use here? We feel that people feel. I have witnessed people expressing that they feel like they deserve to live a certain number of years or days or whatever it is. And that's just not, from the day we're born. Even, and babies die even before they're born. Like, life is not guaranteed to anybody. I don't believe that anyone deserves anything. I think each day is a gift to each one of us. I'm so grateful that I have been given the opportunity to gather these 40 years that I have. I've spoken to my first love, who died when he was 26, and heard many stories of other people who have died younger. My first baby died shortly after she was born. Each day of life is a gift. So that's this form. There's a spot on the back where you can put that you have a legal medical decision maker, their relationship to you, and their contact. And then, oh yes, this is another big area that is medically assisted nutrition, artificial nutrition. So some people never want this. Some people are okay with it for a short period of time. Some people say that they're okay with it for a long period of time. This often comes up at end of life when a body is naturally shutting down. It's a natural part of the dying process to lose our hunger, to no longer be hungry, because our organs are shutting down and we're going to other parts of our body. But it's often something that is pushed on people near the end of their life to have artificial nutrition through a tube that goes up their nose, or there's a more permanent one that would go through your abdomen. And what a lot of people don't realize or consider is that this can cause aspiration, where especially, where the fluid, because your organs aren't working properly, they're not processing this like fake food that's mostly like sugar and water and like vitamins. It's not like real whole foods. And if you're having that in your body, in your stomach, then oftentimes people will regurgitate it up in, to their throat and then breathe it into their lungs, which can cause more trouble. Common side effect of artificial nutrition is liquid stool. So people can be really uncomfortable in their stomach. And so I highly encourage people that are nearing the end of their life not to use artificial nutrition. I understand that there are people that live off of it for years. If you have a swallowing problem or something like that, and they have a long-term G tube, a tube in their belly that provides them nutrition in this way, that is a life-sustaining treatment that allows them to live for years, long decades sometimes. And I also understand that some people might choose this for a short period of time or a long period of time, and it's not me to say what is good for you or not. I just want people to understand the benefit. So always, let's go back to this brain tool. With any of these interventions, remember to reassess and talk about and think through what are the benefits, what are the risks, what are the alternatives, what does my intuition say, do I need more information, does this have to be done now or can it wait? So just a little brain tool reminder to also use that when you're thinking of these medical interventions that are possible, that are practices. They are, they call it practicing medicine because it is shifting and changing always. And so they're experimenting, it's an experimentation by the providers and on to us, and we're choosing to be experimented upon with these different interventions. And some of them, they have done over many, many years. So we have a lot of information about what this does to our physiological process and to our human body. And then there are other ones that we don't know how it will affect us short-term or long-term. All right, so I'm going to first show you this like one pager that we sometimes did offer people, just a healthcare declaration. It's kind of short and to the point if people don't want to go into depth about their medical choices. It's a healthcare decision declaration, and it just says, and you fill in your name, declare that I am a competent adult and a close friend of the patient. I have known, oh, never mind. This is not that this is saying that, so this is if a patient doesn't have an advance directive and they're looking to a relative or friend to be the healthcare decision maker. I thought this was, we used to have a one pager that looked very similar where you could state who you wanted your medical decision maker to be, and that's what I thought this was. But this is one that is used if they don't have anyone else higher up on the hierarchy, like a spouse, adult children, parents, siblings, or relatives, and this would be like a distant relative or neighbor would declare that they feel like they know you well enough to make medical decisions for you. They would complete this form and sign it and be making medical decisions for you in a hospital setting. So this is a document that I assisted with the completion of many, many times. It's an advance directive, like you see at the top. This is a Washington State one. They give you the possibility of naming, your primary healthcare decision maker, and then if they're not available, a secondary and a third. You don't have to fill out all three. You could just have one, or you can have backups in case your secondary and third are unable to make decisions for you. Like you might have your spouse if you were married in this top decision making spot. Some people choose not to have their spouse, even if they know and love their spouse. And then I might have, what if he and I were in a car accident together and then we needed, a different person to be making medical decisions for us, a close friend or someone else that I trusted to make decisions based on my values and not on their own. And then the spot I find is so strange where they have my healthcare representative will make decisions for me only during times I'm unable, or my healthcare representative can make decisions for me right now after I sign this form. And that's for people who just don't like making their own medical decisions and want someone else to make them for them. But I would say that's more unusual. Most people want to be able to make decisions about their own body and medical choices. And this next part kind of speaks to that again. Total flexibility, some flexibility, minimal flexibility. But I think this is kind of bullshit because it kind of just changes based on what's happening to you medically and whether or not you're able to put in your opinion. And sometimes, even if you have a distinct thing that you say you don't want, sometimes it still happens to you in the hospital. And here it talks about indicating your healthcare wishes, like my life is always worth living no matter how sick I am. Or some people have these different feelings about my life is only worth living if, and then you have the chance to put what's true for you. If I can talk with family and friends, if I can wake up from a coma, If I can feed, bathe, or take care of myself, that's a big one for a lot of people, that if they're not able to care for themselves in those basic human need ways, feeding, bathing, and things like that for themselves, that's not a quality of life that they want to live. If I can be free from pain, if I can live without being hooked up to machines. And then there's a possibility of I'm not sure, and then putting in your own words. If I'm so sick that I will likely die soon. And then this is where, again, it's kind of these same sort of categories. Try everything. Even things that the medical staff don't think would be helpful, which does happen. Oftentimes the staff will tell people that this is not going to be a helpful treatment, and yet people still choose that possibility, which is just sort of a strange gray area in my mind. Like, why is it even an option if it's not going to be helpful in medicine, where there's this whole do no harm, although that could be a whole other topic, because there is a lot of harm that's done in the modern industrialized medical system right now, and for the last many, many years, and actually from the get-go. So it's so bizarre to me that is their code of ethics. And then there's a point where you can say, if I'm so sick that I will likely die soon, I do not want life supportive treatments. I want to be comfortable. I want my healthcare representative to decide for me, or I'm not sure. If I'm dying and it's important for me to be at my home or the home of a loved one, in a hospital or other care center, any place I can be cared for with comfort and ease, or other wishes about where I want to be, or it's not important. So this is another thing that it's really, I was trying to look up statistics for this, and I think I'm going to do a whole other episode about how both birth and death have been removed from the home and highly medicalized and intervened upon. But that is where a lot of people, I think it was in some surveys, 70 to 80% of people want to die at home. But statistically, it was 10 to 15% of people actually die at home. And I think some of those are sudden deaths, not ones that it's known that the person is at the end of their life. Most people are dying in a hospital or other hospital-like setting. Even I would say hospice. A lot of people say a hospice center is like a home-like setting, because there's access to fresh air, but you're still in a medical facility being cared for by strangers and given pharmaceuticals and on pumps. And in my mind, to say that is a home setting is just not true. That's false to me. So that's my opinion. You can take it or leave it. And then I feel like this is a really meaningful part of the form. I think this is more meaningful than a lot of the rest of the form, where it talks about, which is really important for people who are knowing that they're approaching their end of their life. It gives some prompts of possibilities of what is important to you and ways that you're comforted. I'm comforted by, and then it says, types of music, readings, presence of certain people or pets, massage. So it gives the possibility for people to talk about, maybe you really like your hair stroked or brushed, or you like soft, gentle touch, or a certain type of music is really comforting to you. There's a place where people can speak to their spiritual, cultural, and religious beliefs and practices. If it's important for you to have smoke medicine, have smudge, sage, or sweetgrass, or cedar burned around you. Of course, most hospitals restrict and don't allow this very easily or at all. They don't honor things like this, even though they have a place for you to write it in. And there's a space for you to speak about whether or not you'd like to donate your organs and which ones. And then about funeral arrangements, whether you'd like to be buried, cremated, death rituals, or practices. I feel like this is such a part in the United States where we really need to grow and expand We have lost so many of our death rituals and practices. In-home funerals are very uncommon, and ceremony surrounding death is really fairly absent as well. If anyone asks how I want to be remembered, please say this about me. Any other things that they want them to know. And then this last page is just the page where it becomes a formal legal document. So here in Washington State at this current time, right now it's 2023 in January, you can either have a notary witness you sign the form of sound mind with positive identification, or have two witnesses and to be a witness, they can't be, they have to be at least 18. They can't be a relative. They can't be a healthcare provider. There's a whole list of things that they cannot be. They can be like a neighbor or someone like that would be someone who could be a witness. And if you have these two witnesses of you, they have to witness you signing the form here. Then this document becomes a legal document that can be used in a hospital or healthcare setting. So that's the big form. And I'm just going to mention this briefly. This 5 wishes form is one that was a program of aging with dignity it came out of Florida. And this kind of goes into more detail about some of all those like questions and thoughts you might want to ask about yourself. Like, what does life support treatment mean to you? Like, is having a feeding tube life supporting treatment? What is a quality of life for you? If you are unable to walk or move your arms and legs, is that a quality of life you'd want to live with? Yes, no, like there's no wrong answer. It's just asking those questions and then talking to the people who you choose as your healthcare surrogates to know this about you so that they can make informed decisions for you if they're ever in this place where they are making decisions. And it says, if I have permanent brain damage and I'm not expected to recover, do I want life supportive treatment? Do I not want life supportive treatment? Are there other conditions under which I do not want to have life supportive treatment? And supportive, I would say sustaining, altering would maybe be better, more true terms. And then these are different wishes where it gives you places for you to like circle or cross out things that you want or don't want. My wish for how comfortable I want to be, having personal care, things you want to know about your loved ones, and again, like things for after your death and what's important to you with what happens to your physical body after you're born. So again, why should you care about this? Because if you don't have one of these documents in place, then it will go to the hierarchy, which I think it's fairly similar across the United States, but I can speak only specifically to Washington State, that if you do not have this document in place and you are hospitalized in a condition in which you are unable to make medical decisions for yourself, it will first be a spouse if you have one that's going to make decisions for you, then all adult children jointly. If you don't have a spouse, if you don't have adult children, it would move to your living parents that would make decisions jointly for you about your medical care. And of course, if you don't have this document, then you probably haven't had those conversations with them and they don't really know how or what is a meaningful quality of life and what medical interventions you would like or would not like. So again, it would go spouse, all adult children, parents, all siblings if you have them, then other relatives, and then friends and neighbors. And then if you don't have any of those, that's when they would appoint a court-ordered medical surrogate decision maker that is a complete 100% stranger to you. So I know this is sort of can be a little bit of part of the dark, but you know what? Without the dark, we won't have light. Without the light, there's no dark. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have birth without also death. You cannot have daytime without the extreme of nighttime, the yin and the yang. They move together, and that's why I find it really important to speak to them both and speak to them as honestly and openly as I know in this moment in time, honoring that, my perspectives will also shift and change across time, and that, but remember that we all die, we come to go. So if you have not considered what you would want your end of life to look like, or what's important to you, or what you would or would not want medically in terms of intervention options, then maybe now's the time to think about that. And also think about who in your life, if it's not your spouse, adult children, parents, or siblings, or relatives that you would want making decisions for you, who is it in your life that knows you the best, knows your values, knows what's important to you, that you would trust to be your voice and make decisions based on what they believe you would want, based on conversations hopefully you will have with them. So I hope that you find this helpful, and I look forward to hopefully recording a few more episodes for you here. We have some more beautiful episodes coming out in these upcoming weeks. I'm really excited for actually the one that is going to post today on this full moon day. Today is a full moon on the 6th, January 6th. Is the one with Danielle Serang. She's an Indigenous entrepreneur, a psychic, intuitive medium, professional medium. And it's a beautiful, fun episode where she talks about near-death experiences, her birth. It'll be episode 45. So this is going to be a few episodes after that. So if you're listening to me now and want to go back to it, it's episode 45. And I'm excited. I think the next one I'm publishing after that is one with Harmony Fronterhouse. She has a beautiful YouTube and a book that she wrote, and we talk about lots of fun synchronicities and birth and life, and also a beautiful episode. So I'm going to close this one out. So as I close this episode, I am going to be still at this time. It's going to be a limited time. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to close this opportunity, but I am delighted to tell you about this limited time offer, the gift of a short, intuitive psychic reading for you in exchange for a review of The Heart of the Soul on Apple Podcasts. As each of you are unique, your reading will be as well. I can share that many women express their experience with words like held, witnessed, loved, connected, aligned. They feel increased trust in themselves. They feel seen and often more centered, with more clarity about their purpose and life path. So you can check out full reviews written about my longer readings on my mediumship offerings page. Your reading will be given through a voice message on email. What I need from you is a screenshot of the review that you have written and a short voice or video message of yourself introducing yourself, telling me your first name, and then spelling out your first name. So send it to me via email at amana@birthingnova.love. I'll use this information from your voice, the energy, the feels from your voice, and if you send a video of your beautiful face, to record a voice message reading for you that'll be about 10 to 15 minutes in length. This is a nearly $50 value, as my 30-minute readings are $111 US. So take advantage of this while it lasts. I will send your reading back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for tuning in today. If you love the podcast, I'd be so grateful if you choose to subscribe, rate, review, or share the show. If you're feeling aligned with me, my energy, my offerings, and are wanting to tap into your wild side, birth your baby wild and free, move through grief or a traumatic birth experience, I support women just like yourself all over the world. Yes, I only work with females. I only work with women. And because I have witnessed how women change with the work that I do, and I truly want it to be accessible to all that are seeking this sort of transformation for themselves, I have payment plans and scholarships available. I'm also very open to creative forms of reciprocity, so please reach out to me, learn more, or book your free clarity call at www.birthingnova.love. Also, if you'd like a mediumship reading, a full one, you can book that through my website. I would love to connect with you. And until next time, remember, be brave, be bold, be love, be you, and be the change that you seek for yourself and for the generations to come. Love, love, love.